العربية صوتنا في العالم.
With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, Algeria and Mauritania have signed more than 29 bilateral agreements covering several key sectors as part of the holding of the 20th session of the Algerian-Mauritanian High Joint Commission for Cooperation. Prime Minister Sifi Gharaib held talks with his Mauritanian counterpart Mr. Mokhtar Oueldejai, during which the two countries reiterated their commitment to boost cooperation. As tension has been running high in the Middle East and the Gulf region, several of Iran's infrastructure were today hit by the US-Israeli airstrikes, claiming lives. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has chaired a working session dedicated to examining the preparations for the visit of His Holiness Pope Leo XIV to Algeria, scheduled for the 13th of April. In this connection, the Archbishop of Algiers, Jean-Paul Vesco, has said that the upcoming visit of Pope Leo XIV to Algeria is a strong symbol of coexistence and a global message of peace. The Archbishop described the visit at the invitation of President Abdelmajid Tebboune as a historic milestone aimed at building bridges between the Christian and Muslim worlds, highlighting Algeria's strategic role at the crossroads of Africa and the Mediterranean. Mr. Vasco said the Pope would arrive as a man of peace, carrying a message the world urgently needs, with a visit centered on the theme as Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. He also highlighted the shared values between Algeria and the Vatican, including support for oppressed peoples and the promotion of dialogue and coexistence, calling on believers of all faiths to unite against violence and extremism. He concluded by reaffirming Algeria as a model of coexistence and expressing his deep attachment to the country and its people. As we followed in our top stories, Algeria and Mauritania have signed more than 29 bilateral agreements covering several key sectors. The signing ceremony was presided over by the Prime Minister, Mr. Sifi Gharaib, accompanied by the Prime Minister of Mauritania, Mr. Mokhtar Oueldejai, at the Government Palace here in Algiers. The agreement includes a cooperation agreement on promoting investment and business opportunities between the Algerian Economic Renewal Council and the National Union of Mauritanian Employers, a cooperation agreement between the Higher School of Sports Sciences and Technologies in Del Ibrahim and the Higher Institute of Youth and Sport in Nouakchott, as well as a twinning agreement between the General Inspectorate of Labour and the Mauritanian one. The two countries also signed a twinning agreement between the National Institute for Higher Training of Youth in Taqsrain and the Higher Institute for Youth and Sport in Nouakchott, and a cooperation agreement between the Algerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and its Mauritanian counterpart. In the same context, a cooperation agreement was signed between the General Directorate for Scientific Research and Technological Development and the Mauritanian Agency for Scientific Research and Innovation, as well as a cooperation agreement between the National Office for University Services and the Mauritanian National Centre for University Services, in addition to a memorandum of understanding between the National Agency for Civil Aviation and its Mauritanian counterpart. The two sides also signed an implementation program between the two countries' ministries of vocational training for the years 2026-2028. In the communications sector, a memorandum of understanding was signed between the television broadcasters of both countries. A memorandum between the Ministry of Communications and the Mauritanian Ministry of Culture, Arts, Communications and Relations with Parliament. The list also included an agreement between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Mauritanian Ministry of Fisheries and a memorandum of understanding between the General Directorate of the Treasury and Accounting, the Central Bank of Mauritania, and the General Directorate of the Treasury and Public Accounting of Mauritania in the field of Islamic banking and banking payment methods and public accounting. The session also culminated in the signing of an agreement on air transport services and an agreement on security cooperation between the governments of the two countries, a memorandum between Algerian Ministry of Relations with Parliament and the Mauritanian Ministry of Culture. Other agreements were also signed on the occasion. The Prime Minister, Mr. Sifi Ghraib, today held talks with Mr. Mukhtar Wuldadjeh outside the 20th session of the Algerian-Mauritanian High Joint Commission for Cooperation meeting here in Algiers. The details with Mariam Barshi.
The talks that were later on extended to the members of the two delegations focused on bilateral relations in light of the outcome of the follow-up committee held yesterday under the chairmanship of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of both countries, Mr. Ahmed Attaf and his Mauritanian counterpart, Mr. Mohamed Salem Ould Marzouk. During the session, Mr. Ghraib held the strong cooperation and partnership existing between Algeria and Mauritania, noting the achievements made under the guidance of President Tebboune and his Mauritanian counterpart, and commended economic cooperation, including the strategic projects like the Tindouf-Zouirat Road and the Commercial and Industrial Free Trade Zone to boost bilateral trade. In this respect, he reiterated the two countries' commitment to boost cooperation and promote partnership to achieve progress in various fields of endeavour.
وعملا بالتوجيهات السامية لقائدي بلدينا.
In line with the guidelines of the leaders of our two countries, President of the Republic Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune and his brother His Excellency President Mohammed Ould Sheikh Al Ghazouani, and translating their firm determination to raise bilateral relations to the highest levels, Algeria, as always, will continue to contribute to the training of Mauritanian youth and students in various fields. This session will provide an opportunity to strengthen and develop the legal framework for bilateral cooperation and expand its scope through the signing of numerous legal texts covering various economic sectors such as energy, industry, tourism, and the environment, as well as social and cultural fields including youth, labor and employment, communication, culture, and education.
The
Mauritanian Prime Minister, for his part, expressed satisfaction at the convening of the High Commission for Cooperation, highlighting the shared commitment of both governments to strengthen bilateral ties. He also stressed the importance of activating cooperation mechanisms, ensuring their regular operation and monitoring results to reinforce the partnership given the country's capabilities and deep ties.
The Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, has affirmed in Algiers that the significant achievements made as part of the partnership existing between Algeria and Mauritania over the past 3 years are a source of satisfaction and optimism, stressing that the shared political will between the leaders of the two brotherly countries embodies a firm commitment to raise bilateral relations to the strategic ranks they deserve. Mr. Attaf made these remarks during the preparatory meeting of the 20th session of the Algerian-Mauritanian High Joint Commission, meeting today, commending progress made on the free trade zone, a 48% rise in trade.
We commend the progress made in completing the construction of the free trade zone, which is expected to be inaugurated next summer. God willing, the level of trade exchanges recorded a remarkable development, reaching 48% during the past year, which enabled Algeria to maintain its position as Mauritania's main trading partner in the African continent since 2023. Our ambitions and aspirations remain much greater than the current levels and figures, because the shared political will between the leaders of the two brotherly countries reflects a firm commitment to advancing our bilateral relations toward the strategic ranks they deserve.
He emphasized that the path chosen by President Tebboune and President Ould Sheikh Al Ghazouani defines the Algerian-Mauritanian relations, reflecting a shared commitment to cooperation and the preservation of communication and coordination amid regional and global challenges.
إنه الدرب الذي اختاره.
This is the path chosen by the leaders of our two brotherly countries, President Abdelmajid Tebboune and his brother President Mohammed Ould Sheikh Al Ghazawani, as a prominent hallmark of Algerian-Mauritanian relations, a clear objective for bilateral cooperation between our two countries, and a shared ambition from which we will neither deviate nor relinquish despite the challenges and regional or global fluctuations surrounding us. The tradition of communication, consultation, and coordination have always been and continue to be a defining feature of Algerian-Mauritanian relations. Today, we are in great need of preserving such traditions, while the international situation around us is witnessing rapid changes that compel us to intensify efforts in order to ward off their risks threatening our security and that of our neighborhood.
بأمننا وبأمن جوارنا.
Earlier, Mr. Attaf received in Algiers the Minister of Foreign Affairs, African Cooperation and Mauritanian Abroad of Mauritania, Mr. Mohammed Salem Ould Marzouk. The Mauritanian official hoped the Joint High Committee session would strengthen historic and bilateral ties in line with the vision of Presidents Abdelmajid Tebboune and Mauritanian counterpart.
We hope that this session of Joint High Committee for Cooperation between Mauritania and Algeria will hopefully be a blessed session, a session in which we make great steps to strengthen this partnership and this relationship, which is based on solid foundations of history, geography, religious and cultural ties, and affection, and that we will live up to the expectations of their Excellencies President Abdelmajid Tebboune and Ould Sheikh Al Ghazawani, who are aware of the importance and necessity of this relationship and understood their role in strengthening cooperation in this region, particularly between their two countries, and we hopefully feel the responsibility to embody their vision.
The two ministers examined the brotherly relations linking the two countries in how to promote bilateral cooperation as well as regional and international issues, including the development in the Sahel and the Middle East. Algeria and Mauritania have strengthened their bilateral ties, with officials holding a series of meetings to boost cooperation across transport, trade and energy sectors. Ministers from both countries discussed enhancing infrastructure links, facilitating trade exchanges and supporting joint hydrocarbon projects, reflecting the efforts in the boosting regional partnership and economic integration. Marin Bashi has the details.
The Minister of State in charge of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mr. Mohamed Arqab, has held talks here in Algiers with the Mauritanian Minister of Energy and Petroleum, Mr. Mohamed Ould Khalid, on ways to strengthen cooperation in the hydrocarbon sector, particularly by supporting exploration and production projects in Mauritania. The talks reflected the renewed momentum in bilateral cooperation, in line with President Abdelmajid Tebboune's vision to strengthen African partnerships and South-South cooperation. During the meeting attended by senior officials, including representatives from Sonatrach, Mr. Arqab reaffirmed Algeria's readiness to support Mauritania through expertise, training and technology transfer, while both sides also explored strengthening the presence of Algerian companies in Mauritania's market. They also discussed cooperation in resource processing, especially phosphate and fertilizers, as well as training and capacity building through institutions such as the Algerian Petroleum Institute. The Minister of the Interior, Local Authorities and Transport, Said Zayoud, and the Mauritanian Minister of Equipment and Transport, Ali Sid Ahmed Al Farik, have reaffirmed the two countries' commitment to strengthening bilateral cooperation in the transport sector. This came out during a meeting held between the two ministers in the presence of the CEO of Air Algérie and the head of the National Civil Aviation Agency, ANAC. The meeting was an opportunity to enhance consultation and intensify coordination between the two brotherly countries in the transport sector. Both parties reiterated their determination to promote cooperation in air, maritime and land transport by supporting partnerships between institutions and national companies, developing transport links and facilitating exchanges reflecting their shared ambition to raise bilateral relations. They also stressed the importance of pooling efforts through an integrated approach based on the exchange of expertise and stronger coordination mechanisms, paving the way for new joint projects serving the interests of both countries. Meanwhile, the Minister of Foreign Trade and Export Promotion, Kemal Rizig has discussed with Mauritanian Minister of Trade and Tourism Zainabou bint Ahmedna ways to strengthen trade cooperation between the two countries and facilitating trade exchanges. Both sides also discussed ways to simplify customs procedures between Algeria and Mauritania in order to ease trade flows and encourage greater economic activity. The ministers further discussed the preparations for the 8th edition of the Algerian Products and Services Fair in Nouakchott, scheduled from May 5th to 11th, 2026, as an opportunity to strengthen the presence of Algerian products in the Mauritanian market and expand partnerships between economic operators. In addition, they addressed ways to activate existing trade agreements, preparations for the 10th session of the Algerian-Mauritanian Business Council, and the organization of bilateral meetings between business leaders from both countries.
A partnership agreement was signed at the Gentian port between the Jijel Port Company and the Algerian Qatar Steel to simplify import and export procedures. The deal will boost port efficiency, support heavy industry near the Belera complex, and strengthen the competitiveness of Algerian products, opening new prospects for investment and sustainable growth. The Secretary of State to the Minister of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies in charge of mines, Karima Bakir Tafer, has received here in Algiers the World Bank Group's resident representative in Algeria, with whom she discussed ways to strengthen cooperation in the mining sector. The meeting, held at the ministry's headquarters, was an opportunity to enhance cooperation, particularly in technical assistance, expertise sharing, and support for mining development projects. The talks focused on current and future projects, especially in mining operations and processing. Ms. Bakir Tafer also outlined key sector programs, the legal framework, and incentives offered to investors. The World Bank representative, for her part, expressed the institution's interest in Algeria's mining sector and its readiness to support it through investment, promoting technical assistance and expertise sharing across the entire value chain. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. As you followed in our top stories, as tensions has been running high in the Middle East and Gulf region, several of Iran's infrastructure were today hit by the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes, claiming lives. Iranian sources said the Zionist strikes hit a second bridge south of Tehran, killing 2 people and wounding several others. Earlier, Iranian officials were quoted by the news agency IRNA as saying that a bridge located near the city of Qom, south of the capital, was also targeted. This came as the Mehr news agency assured that the Karg island in the southwestern part of Iran was today hit by the U.S. Zionist strikes. In this connection, the Iranian authorities threatened to carry out actions and target infrastructure in a bid to deprive the U.S. and its allies from oil and gas. In a communique carried out by the state television, they stressed having showed moderation within a spirit of good neighborliness, but decided to lift all reservations threatening to target areas beyond the region unless the red lines are crossed by the United States. This came in the wake of an ultimatum issued by the United States ordering the Iranian authorities to open the Strait of Hormuz by today midnight. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Stay tuned.